My ex appeared at my workplace and stated, "I'm ready to forgive you and take you back now." I was presenting quarterly projections to our biggest client when my assistant knocked on the conference room door. Through the glass, I could see Melissa standing behind her, wearing the cream blazer I'd bought her for her 30th birthday, and holding a coffee carrier with 2 cups, like we still had morning meetings together. She smiled and waved at me through the window, as if the past 2 years hadn't happened, as if she hadn't emptied our investment accounts to fund her startup with her business partner Trevor, as if she hadn't served me divorce papers on Christmas Eve while I was visiting my dying father in hospice. My hands went numb around the laser pointer, and I watched the red dot shake against the projection screen, while 8 executives from Northpoint Industries stared at me, waiting for me to continue my sentence. I'd been the director of strategic planning at Meridian Financial Group for 6 years and had never frozen during a presentation. My boss, Jeffrey Strand, was sitting at the far end of the table looking concerned. I forced myself to finish the slide about third-quarter performance metrics while my brain tried to process why Melissa was here and what she could possibly want after 2 years of silence. The last time I'd seen her was in our divorce attorney's office, where she'd signed papers agreeing to a settlement that gave her almost nothing because her affair and financial misconduct had been so well documented. She'd walked out of that office without looking back, and I'd spent the following year rebuilding my credit and my life from the wreckage she'd left behind. The presentation ended 20 minutes later, and Jeffrey pulled me aside while the clients were gathering their materials. "Everything okay? You seemed distracted during the back half." I told him my ex-wife had shown up unexpectedly and was waiting outside the conference room. Jeffrey's expression shifted from concern to irritation because he knew the entire story of my divorce and how Melissa had tried to sabotage my career during the proceedings. "Want me to have security escort her out?" he asked, already pulling out his phone. I said no, because part of me needed to know what she wanted badly enough to show up at my office after 2 years of nothing. Jeffrey told me to take the rest of the afternoon if I needed it, and to let him know if she caused any problems. I walked out of the conference room and found Melissa sitting in one of the waiting area chairs, scrolling through her phone. She looked up when she heard me, and stood with that same bright smile I used to love. "Dylan, hi. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. I brought your favorite coffee from that place on 5th Street. She held out one of the cups, and I didn't take it. "What are you doing here, Melissa?" My voice came out harder than I'd intended, but I was too confused to care about being polite. She set the coffee down on the side table and smoothed her blazer. "I needed to talk to you, and you haven't been returning my calls. I tried reaching out a few times over the past month, but you never responded." I hadn't gotten any calls from Melissa and told her so. She looked embarrassed and admitted she'd been calling from different numbers because I'd blocked her main phone. "Why are you trying to reach me at all? We've been divorced for almost 2 years. We don't have kids or shared assets. There's nothing left to discuss." Melissa stepped closer, and I could smell her perfume, different from what she used to wear during our marriage. "I know we ended things badly, and I've had a lot of time to think about everything that happened between us. I'm ready to forgive you for how you handled our separation, and I think we should give our marriage another chance." The words hung in the air between us, and I actually laughed because the absurdity was too much. "Forgive me? Melissa, you had an affair with Trevor for 8 months. You stole $60,000 from our joint investment account. You destroyed my credit by opening cards in my name without telling me. What exactly am I being forgiven for?" Melissa's smile faltered, but didn't disappear completely. "I made mistakes too, but you weren't exactly perfect. You worked all the time and never prioritized our relationship. You made me feel invisible, and Trevor was there when you weren't. I'm not saying what I did was right, but you pushed me toward it by being emotionally unavailable." Every word was something I'd heard before during our marriage counseling sessions and divorce mediation. Melissa had crafted this narrative where my career ambition had somehow justified her betrayal and theft. Our therapist, Dr. Leonard Hastings, had explicitly told her during our final session that affairs were always the responsibility of the person who chose to cheat, regardless of marriage problems. Melissa had walked out of that appointment and never returned. If you are enjoying this story already, please subscribe to see more stories like this. Even if I believed any of that revisionist history, it doesn't explain why you're here now. Our divorce is final. I've moved on. You moved on 2 years ago when you chose Trevor over our marriage. Melissa's expression shifted into something softer and more vulnerable. "Trevor and I aren't together anymore. He left me for someone he met at a tech conference in Austin last year. After everything I sacrificed for him and his business, he just walked away like I meant nothing." Her voice cracked, and I saw tears forming, but I felt nothing except tired. This was the same pattern from our marriage where Melissa would manufacture emotions to manipulate me into giving her what she wanted. "I'm sorry that happened to you, but it's not my problem. You need to leave." Melissa reached out and grabbed my arm, and I could feel people in the office watching us through the glass walls. "Please just listen. I know I hurt you, and I'm genuinely sorry for all of it. But we had something real before everything got complicated. I've been in therapy working through my issues, and I understand now that I sabotaged our marriage because I was afraid of real intimacy. Trevor was just a distraction from the scary depth of what you and I had together. I'm ready to do the work now and rebuild what we lost." The speech sounded rehearsed, and I wondered if her therapist knew she was using therapy language to try to win back the husband she'd betrayed. "Melissa, I don't want to rebuild anything with you. I'm dating someone and I'm happy. You showing up here is inappropriate and you need to go. Her face changed completely at the mention of me dating someone else. The vulnerability disappeared, and I saw the flash of anger I'd learned to recognize during our marriage. Who are you seeing? How long has this been going on? The accusation in her voice was almost funny. That's none of your business. We're divorced. I can see whoever I want without explaining myself to you. Melissa pulled out her phone and started typing rapidly. Is it someone from work? Is that why you're always here? God, Dylan, you judged me for moving on, but you've been doing the exact same thing. I felt my patience completely evaporate. I started dating 8 months ago, which is over a year after our divorce was finalized. That's not the same as you cheating during our marriage. You need to leave my office right now, or I'm calling security. Melissa's eyes filled with tears that looked more real this time. You used to love me. We promised forever to each other. How can you just throw that away without even trying to fix things? I looked at her and remembered the night I'd found out about the affair. I'd come home early from a business trip to surprise her and found her laptop open on the kitchen table with messages between her and Trevor discussing their future together. The messages talked about me like I was an obstacle they needed to work around until Melissa could extract maximum value from the divorce. They'd planned which assets to hide and how to make me look bad during mediation. I'd screenshot everything before Melissa got home, and those screenshots had saved me during the legal proceedings. You threw our marriage away when you chose to lie and steal and cheat. That was your choice, not mine. I just stopped pretending we could fix what you'd already destroyed. I pulled my arm free from her grip and started walking toward my office. Melissa followed me, and people in the hallway were definitely staring now. Dylan, please. I made terrible mistakes, but people change. I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago. I've done the work to become someone worthy of a second chance. Her voice was rising, and I could see my assistant Zara looking alarmed from her desk outside my office. I turned to face Melissa one more time. Even if I believed you'd changed, which I don't, there's no universe where I'd give you a second chance. You had my trust and my love, and you weaponized both against me. That door is permanently closed. Melissa grabbed my hand, and I saw Zara reaching for her phone to call security. I'll prove it to you. Give me 1 month to show you I'm different. 1 month of us spending time together and talking like we used to. If you still want nothing to do with me after that, I'll accept it and leave you alone forever. The desperation in her voice was palpable, but I couldn't let it affect me. No, I don't want 1 month or 1 day or 1 coffee with you. I want you out of my office and out of my life. This is your final warning before I have security remove you. Melissa looked at me for a long moment, and I watched her cycle through emotions. Hurt, anger, calculation. Finally, she stepped back and straightened her blazer. Fine, but you're making a mistake. We're meant to be together, and eventually you'll realize that. She turned and walked toward the elevators with her head held high like she'd won something instead of being rejected. I went into my office and closed the door while my heart hammered in my chest. Zara knocked 30 seconds later and I told her to come in. Are you okay? Should I have called security sooner? Zara had been my assistant for 3 years and knew enough about my divorce to understand why Melissa's appearance was alarming. I told her I was fine and asked her to make a note of the date and time in case we needed documentation later. Zara said she'd already done that and had also pulled the security footage from the hallway cameras. Her efficiency was exactly why she'd earned 3 promotions since starting at the firm. Do you think she'll come back? Zara asked while making notes on her tablet. I said I didn't know, but hoped the rejection would be enough to make her go away. I tried to focus on work for the rest of the afternoon, but my concentration was completely shot. Around 3 o'clock, my phone rang with a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was Melissa crying and asking if we could please just have dinner to talk properly. I told her no, and hung up. She called back immediately from a different number. I answered and told her to stop calling or I'd file for harassment. She said she just needed closure and I was being cruel by refusing to even speak with her. I hung up again and blocked both numbers. My phone stayed quiet for the next hour and I started to relax, thinking maybe she'd finally gotten the message. At 5:30, I was leaving the building when I found Melissa sitting on a bench outside the main entrance. She stood up when she saw me, and I felt a spike of anger that she was still here hours later. I thought I made myself clear. You can't show up at my job and harass me. Melissa walked toward me with her hands up in a peaceful gesture. I'm not harassing you. I'm sitting on a public bench waiting to talk to you like an adult. You can't call the cops on me for being in a public space. She was technically right, but her presence felt threatening anyway. What do you want, Melissa? And don't say you want to get back together because that's never happening. Melissa took a breath like she was preparing to deliver a speech. Trevor's startup failed. We lost everything, including the money I took from our accounts. I'm broke and living in a studio apartment in the bad part of town. My parents won't help me because they're ashamed of what I did to you. I don't have anyone else, and I thought maybe if I could make things right with you, we could both move forward. The truth came spilling out, and I finally understood why she was really here. She didn't want me back because she loved me or had changed. She wanted me back because I was financially stable, and her other options had dried up. So this has nothing to do with love or missing our marriage. You just need someone to bail you out of the consequences of your own choices. Melissa's face flushed, but she didn't deny it. That's not fair. Yes, I'm struggling financially, but that doesn't mean my feelings aren't real. I do miss you, and I do think we were good together before everything went wrong. Can't both things be true? I looked at her and felt absolutely nothing except tired pity. Even if I believed your feelings were genuine, which I don't, I wouldn't help you. You stole from me. You destroyed my credit. You tried to take everything in the divorce. You made your choices, and now you get to live with the results. That's called being an adult. Melissa's expression hardened. You're really going to leave me struggling when you have plenty of money? The old Dylan would never have been this cold. The old Dylan trusted you and believed your lies. That version of me died when I read your messages with Trevor planning how to screw me over in the divorce. This version knows exactly who you are and won't be manipulated again. I walked past her toward my car, and she followed me across the parking lot. Fine. If you won't help me willingly, maybe I'll have to find another way. People should know what kind of person you really are. How you abandoned your wife when she made one mistake. How you're so heartless that you'd let the mother of the woman you promised to love forever suffer in poverty. Her slip about being a mother caught my attention. We don't have kids, Melissa. What are you talking about? She looked flustered for a second before recovering. I meant hypothetically. The woman you promised to have children with someday? Don't twist my words. But something felt off about the way she'd said it, and I filed that oddness away to think about later. I'm done with this conversation. Don't come to my office again. Don't call me. Don't wait outside my building. If I see you anywhere near me or my life, I'll file for a restraining order. I got in my car and locked the doors, while Melissa stood in the parking lot watching me drive away. I could see her in my rearview mirror pulling out her phone, and I wondered who she was calling or what she was planning. I drove straight to my girlfriend Natalie's apartment because I needed to tell her what happened before Melissa found some way to twist the narrative. Natalie was a senior architect at a downtown firm, and we'd met through mutual friends 10 months ago at a gallery opening. She knew about my divorce, but I'd spared her most of the ugly details because rehashing all of Melissa's betrayals felt like giving her power over my present. Natalie opened her door and took one look at my face before pulling me inside and getting me water. What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. I sat on her couch and told her everything about Melissa showing up at my office and waiting outside and following me to my car. Natalie listened without interrupting, and I watched her process the information. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment before speaking. Do you think she's dangerous? Like actually physically dangerous? I hadn't considered that angle, but now that Natalie said it out loud, I wasn't sure. I don't think so. Melissa was manipulative and dishonest, but never violent. This feels more like desperation than actual threat. Natalie nodded, but still looked concerned. You should document everything that happened today. Dates, times, witnesses, what she said. If she keeps showing up, you might need a paper trail for legal action. Her practicality was one of the things I loved about her. No drama or jealousy, just clear-headed problem solving. We spent the evening together, and I tried to push thoughts of Melissa out of my mind. But around 9 o'clock, Natalie's phone buzzed with a notification from Instagram. She glanced at it, and her expression changed. Dylan, you need to see this. She handed me her phone, and I saw a private message from an account I didn't recognize. The message said, your boyfriend's wife wants to talk to you about his lies. Call me, with Melissa's phone number attached. My stomach dropped because now Melissa was going after Natalie directly. Block that account and the number. Don't engage with her at all. Natalie was already blocking everything, but I could see she was shaken. How did she even find my Instagram? Did you tell her about me? I mentioned I was seeing someone, but I never said your name or any identifying information. She must have looked through my social media to find you. I felt violated knowing Melissa had been researching my life enough to track down my girlfriend. Natalie's phone buzzed again with another notification. Different account. Same basic message about needing to expose my supposed lies. We spent the next hour blocking multiple accounts and reporting them for harassment. This is insane, Natalie said while blocking the 5th fake account. Your ex is legit stalking both of us now. She was right, and I knew I needed to escalate this before Melissa did something worse. I called my divorce attorney the next morning. Rebecca Yang had handled my divorce with brutal efficiency and had warned me Melissa might try to cause problems down the line. Rebecca listened to my summary of yesterday's events and asked me to send her all the documentation, including screenshots of the Instagram messages, to Natalie. This is textbook harassment, and we can definitely get a restraining order if she continues. For now, I want you to send her one clear message stating that all contact is unwelcome, and any further attempts will be considered harassment. Send it from your email so we have documentation with timestamps. After that, don't respond to anything else she sends. Every response you give her is encouragement in her mind. Rebecca's advice made sense, and I drafted the email immediately after our call. The email was short and direct. Melissa, our marriage is over and has been for 2 years. Your appearance at my workplace yesterday was unwelcome. The messages to my girlfriend are harassment. Do not contact me, my girlfriend, or anyone in my life again. Any further contact will be documented and used as evidence for legal action. I sent it, and Rebecca, and copied her on it for her records. Rebecca emailed back saying it was perfect, and to save any responses Melissa sent. Melissa replied within 10 minutes with a long, rambling message about how I was overreacting, and she just wanted to explain her side of things to Natalie. She claimed I'd been telling people lies about her, and she deserved a chance to defend herself. I forwarded the email to Rebecca without responding to Melissa. Friday morning, I got to work early, hoping to get caught up on the projects I'd neglected while dealing with Melissa's chaos. Zara was already at her desk, and she looked worried when I walked in. "Your ex has been calling the main office line asking for you. The receptionist told her you weren't available, but she keeps calling back from different numbers. I've asked reception to block her, but she just finds new ways around it." My frustration was building into genuine anger. Melissa's behavior was escalating instead of stopping, and it was affecting my entire workplace. I told Zara to document every call and forward the information to Rebecca. Then I went to Jeffrey's office to give him a heads up about the situation. If this story keeps your interest, please subscribe to get more stories like this. Jeffrey was in a meeting, but his assistant said he could see me right after. I waited in the hallway checking my email and saw 3 new messages from Melissa sent overnight. The first was apologetic, saying she didn't mean to upset me or Natalie. The second was angry, saying I was ruining her life by refusing to help her. The third was manic and barely coherent about how we were soulmates and destiny would bring us back together. I forwarded all 3 to Rebecca with a note asking if this was enough for emergency legal action. Jeffrey's meeting ended, and he waved me into his office looking concerned. "Zara filled me in on your ex calling the office. This is getting out of hand. What do you need from me?" I explained everything that had happened since Wednesday and watched Jeffrey's expression darken. "This is affecting your work and creating a hostile environment. I'm going to have security put her photo at the front desk with instructions to deny her access to the building. If she shows up, we'll call police immediately. I'm also going to loop in our general counsel because her behavior could expose the firm to liability if she escalates." His support meant everything, and I thanked him for taking it seriously. "You've been with this firm for 6 years, and you're one of our top performers. We protect our people. Don't worry about her disrupting your career. Focus on getting whatever legal protection you need and let us handle building security." Rebecca called me an hour later with news. I filed for an emergency restraining order based on the pattern of harassment and the escalating behavior. We have a hearing scheduled for Monday afternoon at 2. Judge Carolyn Prescott will be presiding, and she's known for taking stalking cases seriously. Between now and Monday, I need you to document absolutely everything Melissa does. Every call, every message, every time you see her. Get statements from your assistant and your girlfriend about their experiences. The more evidence we have of a pattern, the stronger our case. I told Rebecca I'd handle it, and immediately started compiling everything into a folder on my laptop. The weekend was tense because I kept expecting Melissa to show up somewhere. Saturday afternoon, Natalie and I went to lunch at a place across town, and I kept watching the entrance, paranoid that Melissa would walk in. Natalie noticed my anxiety and reached across the table for my hand. "She's living in your head rent-free. That's what she wants, to make you feel unsafe and off balance, so you'll eventually give in just to make it stop." Natalie was right, but knowing it intellectually didn't stop the constant vigilance. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You can't hide from me. I know where you are." I showed Natalie, and we immediately asked for our food to go and left through the back entrance. I called the police non-emergency line and filed a report about the threatening text. The officer who took my information was named Detective Lawrence Quinn, and he'd been with the department for 19 years. He asked if I had an active restraining order yet, and I explained about Monday's hearing. Detective Quinn said to bring the police report to court as additional evidence and to call 911 immediately if Melissa showed up anywhere threatening. These situations can escalate quickly, especially when someone feels they're losing control. Don't take chances with your safety. His words made the whole situation feel more serious than I'd been treating it, and I promised to be more careful. Sunday evening, I was at my apartment working on a presentation when my building's front desk called. The security guard, a guy named Raymond Foster who'd worked there for 15 years, said a woman matching my ex-wife's description had tried to get access to my floor by claiming to be my sister. Raymond had asked for ID, and when the names didn't match, he'd denied her entry. She was currently in the lobby refusing to leave and had been there for over an hour. "Should I call the police, or do you want to come down and talk to her?" Raymond asked, and I could hear Melissa's voice in the background saying I'd want to see her. "Call the police. I don't want to see her, and she's trespassing by refusing to leave." The police arrived 20 minutes later, and I watched from my window as they escorted Melissa out of the building. She was gesturing wildly, and I could only imagine what story she was telling them. My phone rang from a blocked number, and I answered to hear a police officer asking if I could verify my relationship with Melissa Fletcher. I explained she was my ex-wife, and we'd been divorced for 2 years, and I had not invited her to my building. The officer asked if I wanted to press charges for trespassing. I said yes, and mentioned the emergency restraining order hearing scheduled for tomorrow. The officer said they'd file charges, and I'd need to come to the station to give a formal statement. I went down immediately and spent 2 hours documenting everything for the official record. Monday morning, I met Rebecca at the courthouse 90 minutes before our hearing. She'd prepared a comprehensive presentation of evidence, including the timeline of Melissa's contact attempts, screenshots of messages and calls, statements from Zara and Natalie, the police report from Sunday night, and my email explicitly telling Melissa to stop contacting me. "This is a strong case," Rebecca said while organizing the exhibits. "Between the workplace harassment, the stalking behavior toward your girlfriend, and the trespassing incident, we have clear grounds for protection. The question is whether Judge Prescott will grant a temporary or permanent order. Melissa showed up 10 minutes before the hearing with a court-appointed attorney named David Wright, who looked like he'd just gotten the case that morning. Melissa was dressed conservatively and had clearly been crying recently. She kept staring at me across the courtroom, and I avoided making eye contact. Judge Prescott called our case, and we all stood. She was a woman in her early 60s with sharp eyes that assessed everyone in the room. She asked Rebecca to present our case first, and Rebecca methodically walked through each piece of evidence. She showed the messages, the call logs, the police reports, the statements from witnesses. She established a clear pattern of escalating harassment that spanned 5 days. Judge Prescott asked Melissa's attorney if he wanted to cross-examine any witnesses or present counter-evidence. David Wright stood and tried to paint Melissa as someone who was just trying to reconnect with her ex-husband and had been unfairly rejected. Your Honor, Ms. Fletcher admits she may have been overzealous in her attempts to communicate with Mr. Parker, but her intentions were never threatening. She simply wanted closure after their difficult divorce, and Mr. Parker's refusal to speak with her led to increasingly desperate attempts at contact. Rebecca objected immediately, saying that Melissa's intentions were irrelevant when her actions constituted harassment and stalking under state law. Judge Prescott asked Melissa to address the court directly. Ms. Fletcher, why did you continue attempting contact after Mr. Parker explicitly told you to stop? Melissa stood, and I could see her trying to compose herself. Your Honor, Dylan is my husband. We took vows before God, and those vows don't just disappear because of paperwork. I made mistakes during our marriage, and I wanted a chance to apologize and seek forgiveness. I never intended to harass anyone. I was just trying to save my marriage. Judge Prescott looked at the divorce decree in front of her. According to this legal document, your marriage was dissolved 23 months ago. Mr. Parker is not your husband. He's your former spouse who has explicitly requested no contact. Did you respect that request? Melissa's composure started cracking. He doesn't mean it. He's confused and angry, and once he has time to think clearly, he'll realize we belong together. I know him better than he knows himself. He needs me, even if he can't admit it yet. Her words made her sound delusional, and I saw Judge Prescott's expression harden. Mrs. Fletcher, what Mr. Parker needs is not for you to decide. He's a grown man who has clearly communicated his boundaries. Your refusal to accept those boundaries is precisely why we're here today. The judge looked at the stack of evidence, and then back at Melissa. I'm granting a 3-year restraining order requiring you to stay at least 500 feet away from Mr. Parker, his residence, his workplace, and his girlfriend. You are not to contact him directly or through third parties by any means. Violation of this order will result in immediate arrest and criminal charges. Do you understand? Melissa started crying, and David Wright put a hand on her shoulder to steady her. Your Honor, please. 3 years is excessive for someone who was just trying to communicate with her husband. Judge Prescott's voice cut through the courtroom. Former husband, and the length of this order reflects the seriousness of Ms. Fletcher's pattern of behavior. The escalation from workplace contact to social media harassment to physical stalking and trespassing happened in less than a week. I have serious concerns about what might happen if this behavior continues unchecked. This order stands as written. Next case. She banged her gavel, and Melissa collapsed into her chair sobbing. Rebecca and I walked out of the courtroom, and I felt like I could finally breathe properly for the first time in 5 days. That went as well as we could have hoped, Rebecca said, while packing up her briefcase. Judge Prescott saw right through Melissa's performance and focused on the actual behavior. The 3-year term is longer than typical, which means the judge is genuinely concerned about escalation. Make sure you keep a copy of this order with you at all times, and don't hesitate to call police if Melissa violates it. I thanked Rebecca for her work and promised to stay vigilant. She reminded me that restraining orders were just pieces of paper, and real safety came from taking the threat seriously. I went back to work and found Zara had left flowers and a card on my desk, congratulating me on the restraining order. The card was signed by her and half a dozen other colleagues who'd apparently been following the situation. Jeffrey stopped by my office mid-afternoon to check in. How'd it go? I told him about the 3-year order, and he looked satisfied. Good. Maybe now we can all get back to work without worrying about your ex showing up. I've updated security with the restraining order details, and her photo is flagged in our system. If she comes within a block of this building, we'll know. His thoroughness was reassuring, and I finally felt like I could focus on my actual job again. The next 2 weeks were blissfully quiet. No calls, no messages, no surprise appearances. I started to relax and believe that maybe Melissa had finally accepted reality. Natalie and I went out to dinner without me constantly watching the door. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes, expecting harassment. Work returned to normal, and I caught up on all the projects I'd neglected. Life felt stable again in a way it hadn't since Melissa first appeared at my office. Then, on a Friday afternoon, I got a call from a number with a local area code I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. The voice on the other end was male and professional. Is this Dylan Parker? This is Officer Graham Pierce with the County Sheriff's Department. I'm calling about a restraining order violation we're investigating. My stomach dropped. Did Melissa Fletcher do something? Officer Pierce said. Melissa had been arrested that morning for attempting to enter my office building in violation of the protective order. Security had recognized her and called police immediately. She was currently being held pending a bail hearing Monday morning. She's claiming she didn't know entering your building violated the order since she didn't actually see you. I wanted to verify that you had not invited her there or given her any reason to believe contact was welcome. I told Officer Pierce about the restraining order and confirmed I'd had absolutely no contact with Melissa since it was issued. He said Melissa would likely face criminal contempt charges for the violation and asked if I'd be willing to testify if the case went to trial. I said yes without hesitation. Officer Pierce thanked me and said someone from the district attorney's office would be in touch about next steps. I hung up and immediately called Rebecca to let her know what happened. "This is actually good for you legally," Rebecca said after I explained. "It establishes that Melissa won't comply with court orders and poses an ongoing threat. The DA will probably offer a plea deal, but if she rejects it and this goes to trial, it strengthens any future requests for extended protection." The DA's office called Monday afternoon. The prosecutor was a woman named Allison Blackwood, who'd been handling domestic violence and stalking cases for 12 years. She explained that Melissa had rejected the initial plea offer, which would have included jail time and mandatory psychiatric evaluation. Ms. Fletcher is maintaining that she didn't violate the order because she never made direct contact with you. Her attorney is arguing she was in the building on unrelated business, and her presence there was coincidental. We have security footage showing her waiting in the lobby and asking the front desk about you, so that defense won't hold up. I wanted to give you a heads up that we'll probably need you to testify about the pattern of harassment and the context of the restraining order. I agreed to testify, and Allison said she'd send me a subpoena with the trial date once it was scheduled. "These cases can be emotionally difficult," she warned. "Defense attorneys often try to paint the victim as vindictive or exaggerating the threat. Be prepared for Ms. Fletcher's lawyer to imply that you're using the legal system to punish her for the divorce." I told Allison I'd dealt with Melissa's manipulation for years and could handle whatever her attorney threw at me. Allison sounded impressed. "Good. A confident, consistent victim makes all the difference in these cases. I'll be in touch soon with more details." The trial was scheduled for 6 weeks out, which meant another month and a half of this hanging over my life. In the meantime, I tried to focus on work and my relationship with Natalie. We'd been together almost a year, and things were getting serious. She'd started keeping clothes at my apartment, and we'd talked about maybe moving in together once her lease ended. But Melissa's ongoing presence in our lives was creating stress neither of us had asked for. One evening, Natalie came over and seemed distant. I asked what was wrong, and she sat down with this serious expression I'd learned to recognize. "I need you to be honest with me about something. Do you still have feelings for Melissa?" The question caught me off guard. "God, no. Why would you think that?" Natalie looked down at her hands. "Because she's still so present in your life. We can't go 3 days without something related to her coming up. The restraining order, the trial, always looking over our shoulders to make sure she's not following us. It feels like she's a third person in this relationship, and I don't know how much more I can take." Her honesty hurt, but I understood where she was coming from. Melissa's stalking was affecting both of us in ways that went beyond just fear or inconvenience. "I don't have any feelings for Melissa except disgust and exhaustion, but you're right that she's taking up too much space in our lives. After this trial is over and she faces real consequences, hopefully this will finally end and we can move forward without her shadow over everything." Natalie nodded, but still looked uncertain. "And if it doesn't end? What if she keeps finding ways to violate the order or harass us? How long are we supposed to live like this?" I didn't have a good answer because I'd been asking myself the same question. "I don't know, but I know I want you in my life, and I'll do whatever it takes to make you feel safe and prioritized. Tell me what you need from me." Natalie was quiet for a long time before speaking. "I need you to stop reacting to every single thing she does. Every call from a lawyer or cop. You drop everything, and it becomes the center of your world for hours. I get that this is serious, but it's also giving her exactly what she wants, which is your constant attention and emotional energy. Can you try to compartmentalize it more? Deal with the legal stuff when you have to, but don't let it consume every conversation we have?" Her request was fair, and I realized I had been letting Melissa dominate my thoughts and time. "You're right. I've been so focused on protecting myself legally that I haven't been present for us. I'll do better." The next month passed more smoothly because I made a conscious effort to keep Melissa-related stress contained. When Allison called with updates about the trial, I took the calls efficiently and then moved on with my day instead of dwelling on them for hours. When Rebecca sent me documents to review, I handled them and filed them away. Natalie seemed to relax as I stopped bringing up every small development, and we started having conversations about our future instead of my past. We looked at apartments together and talked about what we wanted in a shared space. We planned a vacation for after the trial was over. Life started feeling forward-moving again instead of stuck in constant reaction to Melissa's chaos. The trial started on a Wednesday morning in late November. I arrived at the courthouse with Rebecca and found Allison waiting outside the courtroom. She walked me through what to expect and reminded me to answer questions directly without getting defensive or emotional. "The defense will try to rattle you, but stay calm and stick to facts. You're not on trial here. Melissa is." We went inside, and I saw Melissa sitting at the defense table with a new attorney, a woman named Patricia Thornton, who specialized in mental health defenses. Melissa looked thinner than when I'd last seen her, and her eyes had this hollow quality that made her seem unfamiliar. The trial proceeded methodically over 2 days. Allison called security guards from my building, who testified about Melissa attempting to access my floor while claiming to be there for other reasons. She called Officer Pierce, who detailed the arrest and Melissa's statements at the time. She called me to the stand and walked me through the timeline of harassment and the context of the restraining order. I stayed calm and factual even when Patricia Thornton tried to imply I was exaggerating Melissa's behavior out of bitterness about the divorce. "Mr. Parker, isn't it true that you were devastated when Ms. Fletcher left you and you've been looking for ways to punish her ever since?" Patricia's question was designed to make me seem vindictive, but I'd prepared for exactly this. No. I was relieved when our divorce was final because it meant I could start rebuilding my life without Melissa's lies and manipulation. The restraining order wasn't punishment. It was protection from her escalating harassment. Patricia tried a few more approaches, but I didn't take the bait. Allison's redirect was brief and focused on establishing that I'd given Melissa multiple clear opportunities to stop contacting me before seeking legal intervention. When I stepped down from the stand, I felt confident I'd presented the truth without letting emotion undermine my credibility. Patricia called Melissa to testify in her own defense, and I watched her transform into the vulnerable victim version of herself I'd seen so many times. She testified that she'd gone to my building because she'd heard I worked there and wanted to apologize properly for everything she'd done during our marriage. She claimed she didn't realize being in the building lobby constituted contact and thought the restraining order only applied if she actually approached me directly. I just wanted Dylan to know how sorry I was and that I'd changed. I never intended to violate any court orders or make him feel unsafe. Her performance was convincing if you didn't know her patterns, but Allison destroyed it on cross-examination. "Ms. Fletcher, the restraining order explicitly states you must stay 500 feet away from Mr. Parker's residence and workplace. Did you read that order before going to his office building?" Melissa admitted she had read it, but claimed she didn't understand the legal language. Allison showed the jury security footage of Melissa in the building lobby, asking the receptionist if Dylan Parker was in the office and requesting to see him. That doesn't sound like someone who thought they were following the rules. That sounds like someone deliberately violating a court order. Melissa started crying and saying she'd just wanted closure and didn't think asking about me was the same as contacting me. The jury looked unmoved by her tears. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all counts. Judge Prescott, who'd issued the original restraining order, presided over sentencing 2 weeks later. She gave Melissa 6 months in county jail, 3 years probation upon release, and mandatory psychiatric treatment. "Ms. Fletcher, your refusal to accept clear legal boundaries and your continued attempts to insert yourself into Mr. Parker's life demonstrate a troubling detachment from reality. I hope the treatment mandated by this sentence will help you develop healthier coping mechanisms and respect for other people's autonomy." Melissa's mother was in the courtroom and started sobbing as her daughter was led away in handcuffs. I felt relief, but also exhaustion watching Melissa disappear through the side door. This had consumed 3 months of my life and affected my relationship and my work and my peace of mind. But it was finally over in a way I could believe. Melissa would be in jail for 6 months and then on strict probation with requirements that would keep her focused on her own recovery instead of trying to reconnect with me. Rebecca walked out of the courthouse with me and congratulated me on seeing it through. This was a clear case, but it still took courage to follow through with prosecution. A lot of people back down when their exes start facing real consequences because they feel guilty. You did the right thing protecting yourself. Natalie was waiting for me outside the courthouse, and she hugged me tight when she saw me. "It's really over?" I told her about the sentence, and she exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for months. "Good. Now we can actually start living our lives without constantly looking over our shoulders." We went to dinner that night to celebrate, and for the first time in months, I felt completely present in the moment. No part of my brain was scanning for Melissa or anticipating the next crisis. We talked about our apartment search and made plans for Christmas and laughed about stupid things that had nothing to do with my ex-wife or restraining orders or court testimony. 6 months later, I got a notification that Melissa was being released from jail and starting her probation term. Rebecca had arranged for me to be notified of any changes to her status so I wouldn't be caught off guard. The notification included information about her probation requirements, including mandatory therapy, substance abuse counseling, and employment verification. She was prohibited from contacting me or anyone in my life and had to maintain residence at least 50 miles away from my home and workplace. The restrictions were comprehensive, and I felt confident they'd be enforced, given Melissa's history of violations. Natalie and I had moved in together by then, and were building the life we'd talked about during those difficult months. We adopted a dog and started hosting friends for dinner and took up hiking on weekends. My career continued advancing, and I got promoted to Vice President of Strategic Development, which came with a significant raise and more responsibility. Jeffrey told me during the promotion announcement that he'd been impressed by how I'd handled the situation with Melissa while maintaining my professional performance. A lot of people would have fallen apart or let it derail their work. You compartmentalized and kept delivering. That's the kind of resilience we value in leadership. I thought about Melissa sometimes, usually when something triggered a memory of our marriage or the nightmare that followed. But the thoughts came less frequently and carried less emotional weight. She'd been a chapter of my life that taught me painful lessons about trust and boundaries and the importance of believing people when they show you who they really are. The woman who'd shown up at my workplace claiming she was ready to forgive me and take me back had been offering a fantasy where her betrayal didn't matter and consequences didn't exist. I'd chosen reality instead and built something genuine with someone who valued honesty and mutual respect. 3 years after the trial, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line said, "Amends," and I almost deleted it without reading. But something made me open it, and I found a message from Melissa's therapist, Dr. Nina Grayson. She explained that Melissa had been working on making amends as part of her treatment and had written me a letter. Dr. Grayson had read the letter and felt it was appropriate to forward, but wanted to give me the choice of whether to receive it. This is entirely your decision, and there's no pressure to engage with this correspondence if it doesn't serve your healing. I can simply tell Melissa I delivered the message, and you chose not to respond. I thought about it for a few days, and finally told Dr. Grayson she could send the letter. It arrived as an attachment, and I saved it to read when I was alone. The letter was 3 pages long and detailed Melissa's journey through therapy and her understanding of how her behavior had been abusive and delusional. She apologized for the harassment and stalking and acknowledged that her actions had been driven by her inability to accept responsibility for destroying our marriage. I don't expect forgiveness, and I'm not asking for contact. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I put you through, and I'm working every day to become someone who would never treat another person that way again. You deserved so much better than what I gave you during our marriage and after. I hope you've found happiness and peace. I read the letter twice and felt a mix of emotions I couldn't quite name. Relief that she finally understood. Sadness for the years we'd both lost to her inability to face reality. Gratitude that I'd escaped before the damage became permanent. I didn't respond to the letter because there was nothing left to say. Melissa's apology was for her own healing, not mine. I'd already done my healing with Dr. Whitmore and Natalie, and through the simple passage of time that lets wounds close if you give them space. I saved the letter in a folder marked Closed Chapters and moved on with my evening. Natalie and I got married the following spring in a small ceremony at a vineyard with our closest friends and family. My vows included a promise to always communicate honestly, even when it was difficult, to respect her boundaries even when I didn't understand them, and to choose our partnership every single day. She cried during my vows and later told me she'd been worried I'd compare her to Melissa during the ceremony. "But you didn't mention your ex or your past at all. It was all about us and our future. That's when I knew you were really free of her." She was right. I was free in a way that had nothing to do with restraining orders or jail sentences, or even Melissa's eventual understanding of what she'd done. I was free because I'd chosen to build something new instead of staying trapped in anger about what I'd lost. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.